Welcome back to the DTF Film Sessions. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean. I'm here with Nick Merriam. He is our director of draft content and scouting. You can find him at Nick with Sports on Twitter. And we are back to do another defensive lineman. Today we have episode number 14, Myles Murphy, defensive end from Clemson. So Murphy's a guy that, there's a lot of projection here. The traits are definitely there. You can see some pretty ridiculous fluidity for his size. Like, he's definitely a very natural athlete, but you just don't see everything come together in ways that impact the game. So again, I watched one game I watched him versus Notre Dame for Murphy. And so, I feel like I saw him against what's generally a pretty decent offensive line. He's 6'5", 268, so he's big as well. So not quite as long as Tyree Wilson, who was our last breakdown, but stout. And his ability to, change direction, his speed it's all pretty impressive. But, the question is, how much refinement is it going to take for him to be an impact player? So what do you think about Myles Murphy, Nick?
Yeah, so it's interesting you talk about the Notre Dame thing because we're going to get into some Notre Dame plays. And Joe Alt is their left tackle, might be the best tackle in the country and maybe one of the best tackles we've seen come out in a while next year. Even compared to Penei Sewell, he might be better. So that was a good matchup for him to try and see if he could do much of anything, and kind of got beat a little bit, but he had some good plays. So it's like, it's not any good reps against Joe Alt are going to be great reps. He's just big and powerful. I think he has pretty good long speed. I don't know if his burst is awesome. I think the problem with Murphy's kind of hyping at the beginning of the year is people like we did Tyree Wilson last video. He's the Travon Walker in this draft class, right? Maybe more put together than Travon Walker. People were calling Myles Murphy the Travon Walker, and he's like a good athlete. He's fluid. I do think he has a decent top end speed. I think more so though, he is strong. He's big. People kind of forget about how size in a position where like moving the line of scrimmage is important factors in. And he's a veteran type player at the college level. Like, he knows what he's doing. So for me, like, I don't know if he's a freak athlete. I don't think his high end's great. I think it's hard to see the kind of the smarts in his game because of how weird the Clemson defensive line structure is. We're coming back to this again. But I think he is a very high floor starting edge player who kind of sets in day one, knows what he's doing against the run, will add for you as a pass rusher, will finish plays when he gets to the quarterback for the most part. I don't know that he's going to have like these games where he just takes over and dominates, like say like Von Miller might have at the top of the draft, but he's certainly going to, I have him in my latest mock. He's going to go 31 of the Chiefs. That's a team that, opposite of another guy like George Karlaftis, who's like big and lengthy and can kind of throw out a move that's like not many guys can do that with their upper body strength too often. Will get certain players when he's got the right matchup and gets the quarterback, but he's not going to take over games. He's just going to be the type of player that sits for, however many years in your D-line. You're like, all right, we're set. We're good. We could probably add some more depth, some different types of bodies, maybe a speed rusher on third down. But this guy on early downs is just, he's good.
All right, so let's take a look and see what we see on tape.
All right, play number one. So he is a capable mover as a size. I don't think he's an elite bender, but he can rush. This is just a standard, getting around the edge through a sack. Good balance, kind of leaning in. This bend, again, not great, but you can kind of see he gets his hand inside initially there, and he's able to outrun a decent left tackle, whose name eludes me at this point, to the quarterback, kind of bend at the end to make the tackle. He doesn't really do it while turning the corner, but we kind of, again, talking about Tyree Wilson last week, or whenever that video came out, might be a couple days ago, or at the same time, who knows, showing the ability to just kind of use his body control, get low, and grab the quarterback, uses the momentum of his body weight to bring down Jordan Travis.
Right, and it's an athletic quarterback too, although doesn't really get a chance to make a move. So he doesn't really bend, and he doesn't run straight through the corner. What he does is right here, he kind of takes like a hop step. I'm sure there's a better name for this technique, but he hops off of his left foot to give himself a little bit more space from the tackle, and then sets the foot there, and then goes through. Mm-hmm. So this is a play where you got to be careful because like a good tackle will just push you like right out of the play if you try that. But it's also ridiculously athletic for his size. The biggest thing that stood out to me for him is balance. I just almost never see him off balance. And again, for a player of his size, that's just not something that you commonly see. I just feel like he just has such a natural way of keeping his feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the
and that
strengths
will
I've written.
translate.
And I also should point out, I think on this play, he gets very good get off here. Again, this is a guy who's a veteran football player, unlike Tyree Wilson. Like, he has played this game for a long time. He has played a lot of snaps for Clemson over the course of 3 years. He knows what he's doing in terms of like watching the ball, knowing when the snap count's coming, kind of film study, being ready for things coming at him, making decisions on the field. That's kind of rare for an edge player in the draft at this point to be a high pick. Like, most of these guys we see are more just raw athletes. Again, here, like just kind of, setting this one gap play on as a run defender, balance. Like you said, you get a hand inside the tackle. You kind of have to sync up your hips and your upper body strength to kind of leverage the tackle moving across you, as well as you trying to kind of drive upfield to stay in that gap and make a tackle. This is a hard play against a guy who, again, will be a top 5 pick next year, likely in Joe Alt. And he's probably got about, say, 50 pounds at the very least. I don't know how big Joe Alt is. He might be bigger than that on him. This is a tough play, and he's able to make it work.
Yeah,
this might be the tight end. I might be wrong about that, actually. Yeah,
but regardless, he's going to be sorting through mess here, right? So
still Michael Mayer, who's almost as big as him.
Right. But so as he comes across here, he's stepping through and around a bunch of just legs here. He just throws his hand out, and it's just like there's just feels like there's never any risk of him tripping or falling down here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
core strength is obvious as well.
Pad level, just this is he's much clearly taller than the guy who's blocking him. This is the type of guy who clearly is working off the field to get his technique right. And in this case, it's balancing a bunch of different things, right? It's I got to get upfield. I got to not get pushed into this offensive lineman. Like you talked about, I got to step over Joe Alt's legs so I don't trip over them. And I got to stay upright because although I'm trying to move downfield, when that tight end is kind of on your side, the tendency is going to be that you're getting pushed downward if you have the right pad level. So he's almost like carrying a tight end on his back. Difficult thing to do. And he makes it look easy.
Very high-end body control. All right.
Mm-hmm. So he sets the edge maybe better on his own than anyone in this draft class. And that's like a combination of like vision, anticipation, just, field space, intelligence. Here he's like driven the tackle backwards. I believe this is finally a Joel Alt rep where he beats him. And, it's a nice power rush to get behind the quarterback, although Alt kind of brings him behind. And it's just, he's got him effectively beat to the quarterback, but his ability to disengage and then collapse down when the quarterback tries to escape is kind of predetermined. Like, he knows that's where the quarterback can escape if it's the best place he can escape. And so he's ready to make this tackle when it occurs for the sack. This maybe like at first glance might just look like, oh, it's a broken play, escapes in the pocket, sack because of hustle. Like, oh, so what? Like, it's a cleanup sack. But he puts himself in position to create the scramble by getting behind the quarterback. And then, the thought process, like the thinking ahead and the ability to shed quickly and make this tackle is impressive.
Yeah, and you can see that even though Alt clearly has longer arms than him right here, that he has won this leverage battle. So he's hit him with the long arm. Now, he likes to use this move. I'm not sure that it necessarily is like the greatest asset of his. So I would like to see him diversify, because I haven't checked his combine measurables, but he doesn't appear to have the longest arms for, an edge defender, but he really likes to use this move, and it doesn't always work for him. But in this case, he does get the hand there quickly enough that he wins that leverage battle. And then he has, what's the word I'm looking for? He has good, the word I'm looking for is he stays under control, right? He doesn't let himself get pushed out of situations too often. You'll see him occasionally,
He's like a poised edge rusher.
Yes. I guess that is not the word I'm looking for, but it is a good way to say it.
Yeah.
All right.
These plays are going to get more impressive from like an intelligence perspective, because I think a lot of the stuff that you see on tape from him is just kind of predetermining what's in front of him, making correct reads, and setting things up for success in the long run as the play develops. Again, this is going to be a setting of the edge. He's going to navigate trash here a little bit. He's going to be able to make the tackle with great vision anticipation of where this play is going. Now, again, Clemson kind of allows their guys to stay out of position once they get to leave their one gap. And so again, like this running back kind of runs right into him, but he doesn't really ever leave his initial position, which is guarding the outside of the C gap here. He stays outside the tackle the entire time, even though the play ends up way inside. He just kind of shows his hat, makes sure that run is not getting outside, and as it gets cut back, he kind of just is able to keep his eyes on the runner and be in position for the tackle.
Right. Okay. So he has better change of direction than Tyree Wilson too. And, that shouldn't be surprising since he's got 2 inches less, height to try and
I don't think
contend
he's
with.
moving as fast as Tyree Wilson is either. But yes.
Well, not necessarily on this play, but I just feel like in general, his change of direction is just a little bit more natural, a little bit more bursty.
And it should be said, like, if this pitch happens, it's probably a big gain. I think Travis pulls it down because Murphy is like threatening to intercept the pitch by getting into that lane.
Right. Yeah, I would say that one way to impacts his play on multiple levels. Good, and like you said, poised, but it's bothering me that I can't remember this. I can't think of this word because it just describes him so effectively. It'll come to me as soon as we stop recording, I'm sure.
Yeah, that is how things work. I'll tell you if I think of something else that describes it well. Again, here we're getting kind of 5-teching. Again, just setting the edge so intelligently in the run game, right? Like you have the D gap, or sorry, well, is that D in this case? We have a tight end. So he effectively collapses to C. It's a stretch play. It's away from him. He needs to collapse down on whatever that most outside blocker is and kind of stay on his hip so that no inside, cutback can occur. Because if this running back decides to kind of cut wide and start running parallel to the line of scrimmage, like sure, like you can chase him down. Someone can rally. He's not going to gain a lot of yards. You need to make sure that he's not able to get that immediate vertical look. And Murphy does such a good job of effectively moving 10 yards here with his hand on the hip of an offensive lineman to stay in position so that when the running back does kind of look for somewhere else to run, he's right there.
Right. So it's the same idea, basically. He knows what his responsibility is, and he keeps himself in a position where he can maintain his responsibility, but also impact the play elsewhere if the ball does go in a different direction. So he's kind of hiding behind the offensive line here, but he's ready to just jump back and make the edge contain. And there's another defender here too, but he just gets right there and just shuts it down.
Yeah, and the difficulty here is and people talk about it with pulling guards more when you see it at the NFL level when they kind of get the telestrator out in games. The gaps shift, right? When the play moves, right? So you need to be able to kind of identify how that occurs. And in this case, it's not really much of a shift because it's just zone blocking but the line of scrimmage is moving. So you need to kind of on the fly be able to say, all right, this is where the C gap was. It's going to end up all the way over there. I need to be there because that's my responsibility.
Did we just watch the 4th clip or the 5th clip?
That was the 5th clip.
Okay.
So this is the last one we have here.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting through this pretty quickly. So maybe you'll have some time to think of the word at the end here. We'll talk about it.
It's not regimented. It's not regimented, but it's close. Almost
man.
There.
Now you're going to get me, man. Regimented. I don't know. Yeah, that sounds like something that's correct. I don't know. A contain rush, right? This is a play that I think edge rushers struggle to make at the NFL level so consistently. He has taken a very wide rushing lane, and he's done a very good job of collapsing horizontally because, you still have that contained responsibility to make sure that the first movement the quarterback can make, because he has inside help, is to kind of spin out. And often you see these defensive ends and this quarterback spin out, they don't have the ability to break down and make this tackle. But he kind of, first of all, has that change of direction ability, as you've talked about. But again, I think he's kind of thought this through. I think he has some kind of predetermined thought process where he knows this quarterback's movement with inside help is he's going to try and spin out. So he is ready to turn his hips ever so slightly and lay out and make this tackle when he needs to against, again, an athletic player in Jordan Travis. And I think often you see edge players, even like really talented guys like Montez Sweat, who I think really struggles with this, like have the inability when they get downhill and get flat on that turning the corner, that when the quarterback spins out, they just their ankles get broken because they're big guys moving downhill looking to tackle the QB, and they get excited. In this case, he is just fully ready to say, my responsibility is not to crush the QB. It's to make sure he doesn't get out of this pocket.
Right. So he recognizes also that there's a free rusher right here. And so instead of just cutting straight to the quarterback, he just maintains his position. And then again, regardless, this is an athletic quarterback. So his ability to get to a point where I can actually see. So he's here, right? And his leverage still has to maintain contact with the tackle so he's not pushed out of the way, and then he's able to step away, change direction, and completely change the body angle, from leaning left to leaning right, and extending and making that play with decisiveness as well. So discipline is the word. He's a very disciplined edge rusher. God, that was a challenge.
Wow. I don't know. I feel like, that's a great word to describe it. Very disciplined player.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. Which is funny because I don't know if it's because of the Clemson defensive line play. Like, I don't know if he's has discipline against the run and the interior specifically, but in terms of edge setting, like, he's great. And again, like, that last play is an example of when you're in a position where you've already won and you're going to win, like that tackle's not recovering, you don't have to go get the quarterback. Let the quarterback go to you. Like, just wall him off. Let the rest of the pocket collapse. If you have your rush lanes correctly, that's fine. In which case they did. They had like correct rush lanes and pockets collapsing on him, even 15 yards downfield, whatever it was. You don't have to take yourself out of position because you're trying to pad your stats effectively, which I think, is maybe a very cynical outlook of like how edge rushers work in the NFL. But I do think they get excited about sacks sometimes and they leave their angles at the last second because they're trying to make the play. In his case, it's just, I'm already here. So why would you take yourself out of position when the play's been made?
Right. And I think the downside with him is some of the stuff you don't see here, which are plays where his get off is not as explosive, right? Where you just don't see him do that, but you see that he can do it. But if you were going to trust him to be an impact player in multiple facets in year one, you would want to see consistency there, especially in the pass rush.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of plays, and maybe this is schematic, but he's not super decisive, right? Especially in his pass rush. So he just goes and then he just kind of maintains contact, and like he doesn't get after the quarterback. He just kind of waits to see if something happens. And so we've seen some positive plays here, but there's a lot of plays where you just kind of see him being just a body as opposed to an impact.
If we do Jack Campbell, we'll talk about this more, but I think that's a clear difference between like players that lean more on the thinking side of things and the athletic traits side of things, where traitsy players are more decisive downhill. Just, we'll see where my traits take me. Thought process players are more likely to be less decisive because they're trying to see things kind of develop and then get ahead in their thinking and then make a play, ahead of timing, which is what he's doing. I think another word that can describe him, and this is going to sound really mean, but I don't mean that, is he's a basic edge player. Like, it's not, there's nothing like, there's not like in a unique pass rush toolbox here. He's not throwing like the hands and like making like these amazing hand use plays. And maybe he gets to a point where, like, because he's a student of everything else, becomes a student of like kind of how Chandler Jones was, of how to use his hands and like just make tackles miss before they try to engage him and get to the quarterback. That's something that can occur sometimes. But for him, it's just, get upfield, set the edge, see what happens. And beyond that, it's like he knows what he's doing and can make plays because other players don't, think as well as he does on the fly. And, there's value to that for sure. He's going to be this is a guy that'll be a captain in the NFL, I think, for sure.
Yeah, certainly could be. Did Shaq Lawson, did he play at Clemson?
I think so, yeah.
I think he did. So it's funny because my concern is that he could be a guy who'll go to the NFL and just have like a Shaq Lawson career, right? Where he'll have like one good year and he might get a second contract as a result of that, but probably not necessarily live up to it in terms of pass rushing, where it's like he just lasts for like a decade in the NFL, but just is never a big time player. But there is the possibility that he could definitely be more than that, right? You look at the traits, and even though he's not a toolsy player in the sense that that's what he relies on for his game, he definitely has them. So, there is projection there, but just based on what I've seen, it's like you'll see a couple of splash plays here and there, but you never see that pass rushing upside come to fruition. That's kind of the thing that I worry about, which is why if you really need edge help, maybe you go for him in the first round, but I kind of like him as an early second round guy right now. But again, I need to continue diving deeply into all of the players that are available this year.
Yep, I agree. I think that's where I would take him. Again, like I had him Chiefs. I think the Saints are an interesting team. If the Eagles are looking to add edge, sure. Although I think they're probably looking more for like developmental guys once their current players retire and or move on. He's going to be a very nice placeholder for the position for whoever. And there's value to that. Like a lot of the guys you take, you don't expect to start immediately. I think he starts immediately and he's fine. I don't think, he's going to be, again, I don't think he's going to be JJ Watt or, Von Miller, but he very well, I think Shaq Lawson's a good comparison. He could be like, who's another like edge rusher who's kind of stuck in the league. It hasn't been like fantastic, but has been like decent enough. Like, this is maybe unfair to Jermaine Johnson because I think he has like a higher projection to this, but I think what Jermaine Johnson year one is kind of like what Myles Murphy will consistently give you, except for as a starter full time, where Johnson was more rotational player.
Right. I think that's probably fair. The ability to defend the run, potential splash plays in the run. I think the one thing that I feel like Johnson had was he played like with that never-ending ferocity.
Yeah, and right? that's why he's going to be more than rotational. Or if he is a rotational guy, it'll be because he's just like we bring him in as a pass
on a deep line. Yeah. So I don't know. I think the comparison can be there in terms of like some of the skill, and some of the ability right now, but different players still. But yeah, I like him. I do. I think I just don't want to encourage overdrafting. That's all I would say.
I wouldn't take him at 8 if I were the Falcons, which I still think we do see sometimes here and there, but.
Look, the traits are there. They are. They're a little more subtle because just of the way that he plays, but you could definitely talk yourself into it. I understand that for sure. And I haven't looked at the testing, but you can just see on tape that, he can be explosive. The body control and balance are very good. And so, you can kind of predict,
Well, he didn't test, by the way, at the combine. So, I don't know if that tells us anything, but.
Not sure. Maybe he's not as big.
He might have been injured. I don't know. But sometimes that's the case.
I'm sure that he still got measured at least. But
yes.
All right.
We're using the measurables from the combine. Yeah.
Okay, good.
34-inch arms, I believe, which is, decent, but not for his size. Like you kind of expect a little bigger, but it's like a 250-pound edge rusher. That's good,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, he's kind of an interesting, body type, but. All right, I think that'll do for us on Myles Murphy today. We are rambling. We're looking for a reason to like really love this guy, and I think that it's just.
I'm just trying to figure out what he is. Like he's a strange. That's why before we record this, I was like, this is an interesting one because I think it really is. It's a different discussion that we've had.
I swear this is not helmet scouting, but I just have this feeling that Shaq Lawson is like the exact type of player that he's going to end up being in the NFL. But guy that can kind of play inside outside. Can defend the run well, can rush the passer sometimes, but like just never going to be that premier type of rusher. All right. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I am at the Max Dean on Twitter. You can find Nick at Nick with Sports. You can find Defiant Takes Football at Defiant Takes on all social media outlets. You can find all of our written work over at defianttakesfootball.com. We are covering the majority of the NFL at this point with publication, as well as the NFL draft pretty heavily right now. You can find us live on the YouTube channel every Monday and Thursday morning. You'll also find those episodes released on our podcast feed. And you can find more DTF film sessions and, of course, our brick wall breakdowns that I'm doing, offensive line breakdowns with Kyron Samuels. And that is the end of my spiel now. All right, guys, thanks so much. And you can find Christian Gonzalez coming up shortly here on the Defiant Takes Football YouTube channel.